Welcome, brave souls, to another journey into the darkness. Prepare yourselves for a tale that will send shivers down your spine and haunt your dreams forever. I have prepared my most macabre terror story that I can think of to share with you, so brace yourselves, for this story will make your blood run cold and your heart race with dread. Real Vampire Cases of America. America has a long and eerie history of vampire lore, with real-life vampire cases that blend superstition, diseases, and fear. These stories often seem from times when people sought explanations for unexplained deaths and illnesses, leading to chilling and strange practices to ward off the undead. Here are a few of the most infamous cases. The Mercy Brown Incident, 1892, Rhode Island. Perhaps the most famous vampire case in American history. Mercy Brown was a young woman from Exeter, Rhode Island, who died of tuberculosis in 1892. Her mother and sister had already died of the disease, and her brother Edwin was gravely ill. Mercy's body was found unnaturally well preserved, despite being buried for 2 months in the winter. Her heart and liver were removed and burned, and the ashes were mixed into a tonic given to Edwin to drink, in hopes of curing him. Sadly, it did not save him, and the event remains one of the most famous vampire panics in the U.S. The Vampire of Jewett City, 1854, Connecticut. In the mid-19th century, the Ray family in Jewett City, Connecticut became plagued by tuberculosis. Several family members died from the disease over the course of a few years. Fearing that one of the deceased was returning from the graves to drain the life of the survivors, the town decided to dig up the bodies of the deceased family members. When the body of Henry Ray was exhumed, it was found to have been remarkably preserved, and blood was found in the heart. The townspeople saw this as a clear sign of vampirism. They burned Henry's heart and liver to prevent him from future afflicting the living. The New England Vampire Panic, late 18th to 19th century. The case of Mercy Brown and the Ray family are part of a large vampire panic that swept through New England during the 18th and 19th century. As tuberculosis ravaged communities, people often resorted to superstitions to explain why entire families were succumbing to the illness. Bodies were frequently exhumed, and if they showed signs of bloating or appeared unusually well preserved, natural effects of decomposition that were not well understood at the time, they were labeled as vampires. Hearts were removed and burned to stop the spread of the disease. The Vampire Murder of Lili Lindström, 1932, Sweden. Although not an American case, it's worth mentioning because of its lurid details and connection to vampiric behavior. In 1932, in Stockholm, Sweden, Lili Lindström, a prostitute, was found murdered in her apartment. She had been beaten to death, and investigators discovered that her blood had been drained. Near her body, police found a soup ladle, which they believe was used by the killer to drink her blood. While the case became known as the Atlas Vampire Case, it remains unsolved, and it fueled urban legends about real vampires in the 20th century. Fritz Harman, the Vampire of Hanover, 1920s. While Fritz Harman was a German serial killer. His gruesome acts of murder and cannibalism earned him the nickname the Vampire of Hanover. Between 1918 and 1924, Harmon killed at least 24 boys and young men, often by biting their throats and drinking their blood. His horrific acts, though not connected to American folklore, influenced the modern image of vampires in popular culture. Modern vampires in New Orleans. New Orleans, with its rich history of voodoo, mysticism, and supernatural lore, has long been associated with vampire legends. Today, it's home to a subculture of people who identify as real-life vampires, often claiming to need to drink human blood with the consent of their donors or feed off of the energy of others. Some criminal cases also have vampire overtones. For example, in the 1990s, Rod Ferrell, leader of a self-proclaimed vampire cult in Florida, was convicted of murdering a couple in Kentucky. Ferrell, who claimed to be a 500-year-old vampire named Versico, was sentenced to life in prison for the killings. In conclusion, the fear of vampires in America, particularly during the 18th and 19th centuries, often stemmed from a lack of understanding about diseases and decomposition. While modern science has debunked those old beliefs, the stories of vampires digging their way out of graves or draining the life of their loved ones remains a chilling reminder of how fear and superstition can influence even the most rational societies. Thank you for tuning into this eerie tale. Until next time, stay tuned for more spine-chilling stories. This was Sandra Pink.